When the film Highlander first arrived in theaters, it didn't immediately become a box office sensation. Instead, its legacy grew over time until it achieved something close to immortality. With its mix of centuries-spanning sword duels, glowing neon city settings, and the powerful rock soundtrack by Queen, the movie eventually became one of the most beloved cult fantasy films ever made. Behind the film's legendary atmosphere, however, there was plenty of unpredictability, risk, and strange good fortune. Dangerous stunts, scenes that were never filmed, and unusual casting decisions all shaped the production in surprising ways. The hidden stories behind the making of Highlander have remained largely unknown for years, and some of them may completely change the way viewers look at the movie. The first secret involves a leading actor who couldn't speak the language of the film. Imagine earning the starring role in a major Hollywood production while barely understanding English. That was exactly the situation faced by Christopher Lambert when he was cast as Connor MacLeod. Because he didn't fully understand the dialogue, Lambert memoized every line phonetically, repeating the sounds without knowing the meaning behind the words. Language coaches worked closely with him, breaking the script down into individual sounds and helping him practice until the rhythm felt natural. Even though the dialogue itself was often unclear to him, Lambert practiced tirelessly for hours at a time. Ironically, the strong French accent that producers initially worried about turned into one of the character's greatest strengths. On screen, that accent gave Connor a mysterious, almost supernatural presence that fit perfectly with the idea of an immortal warrior who had lived across many centuries and cultures. What began as a language challenge ultimately became a defining trait of the character. The second story involves the actor who unintentionally frightened the entire crew. A movie set is usually meant to feel cooperative and comfortable, but Clancy Brown changed that atmosphere with his performance as the villain known as the Kurgan. Brown committed to the role so intensely that some crew members started keeping their distance between takes because his presence felt genuinely unsettling. He used a method-style approach and often stayed in character throughout the day, maintaining the Kurgan's aggressive energy and deep threatening voice even when the cameras weren't rolling. His intense stare and imposing height made people instinctively back away when he entered the room. The result of this dedication was remarkable. Brown created one of the most memorable villains in fantasy cinema, and the fear seen on the faces of other actors often came from real reactions to his intimidating performance. Another surprising secret involves the sparks seen during the sword fights. Those flashes weren't created by computer effects or clever editing. Instead, the props team attached car batteries directly to the swords so that real electrical arcs would burst out every time the blades clashed. This meant genuine electricity was traveling through the weapons while actors performed the choreography. Safety standards during the 1980s were far less strict than they are today, allowing filmmakers to attempt effects that modern productions would likely reject due to insurance concerns. The risk was real, but it created a powerful visual impact. Each spark was authentic, adding a raw physical energy to the duels that digital effects sometimes struggle to replicate. Another remarkable production story involves Sean Connery, who played the mentor character Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez. Connery completed all of his scenes in just 7 days and reportedly earned $1 million for that brief schedule. He approached the shoot with discipline and efficiency, arriving prepared and delivering strong performances quickly. Despite the short filming time, Connery's natural charisma brought warmth and wisdom to the role. His character became the emotional center of the story and played a crucial part in shaping Connor's journey. The performance proved that a talented actor can leave a lasting impact even with limited screen time. One of the most dangerous moments during production occurred while filming the castle duel between Ramirez and the Kurgan. During the scene, a heavy chandelier suddenly broke free from its mount and crashed down toward the crew. It missed them by only a few feet as people rushed to get out of the way. The accident happened during one of the film's most complicated action sequences. The vibrations from the intense choreography likely weakened the chandelier's old support structure. Even after the close call, filming continued, though everyone remained far more cautious. That real sense of danger contributed to the tension viewers feel while watching the scene. Another behind-the-scenes moment occurred during the duel between Ramirez and the Kurgan. Clancy Brown was worried about accidentally injuring Sean Connery during their sword choreography. A single mistake could have seriously harmed the legendary actor and damaged Brown's career. Connery noticed the younger actor's nervousness and used humor and encouragement to help him relax. By joking between takes and offering reassurance, Connery built trust that allowed both performers to fully commit to the fight choreography. Their cooperation created one of the movie's most memorable battle sequences. Early creative concepts for the film also included a much more fantastical idea. Designers once imagined a dragon emerging from the Kurgan's armor during the final confrontation. Storyboards depicted the creature unfolding its wings on the rooftop as lightning struck around it. However, the special effects required to create a convincing dragon in 1986 would have consumed a large portion of the budget. The idea was ultimately abandoned, which may have helped keep the film grounded and believable. Even the opening scene nearly turned out differently. The film famously begins with a wrestling match at Madison Square Garden, but the original concept placed Connor at a hockey game instead. The National Hockey League objected to the idea, worrying that connecting the sport with a violent fantasy story might harm its public image. As a result, the filmmakers switched to professional wrestling, whose theatrical energy ultimately matched the movie's tone much better. Marketing decisions also caused problems. The American promotional poster for Highlander showed a stark black and white image of Christopher Lambert that made the hero look more like a horror villain than a romantic fantasy warrior. Director Russell Mulcahy strongly disliked the design and believed it hurt the film's box office performance in the United States. European advertising focused more on adventure and romance, while American audiences received a confusing first impression. Some of the battle scenes in the Scottish Highlands also gained their realism from unexpected circumstances. Many of the extras portraying clan warriors drank alcohol before filming, which led to unpredictable and chaotic combat. While the behavior caused some injuries and disrupted choreography, it also produced a rough authenticity that made the scenes feel more like genuine medieval warfare. The lightning scene during the quickening moments also carried symbolic meaning. Director Russell Mulcahy designed these energy transfers to represent spiritual rebirth. Practical effects such as electrical arcs, water sprays, and intense strobe lighting were used to make the moments feel physically real. Lightning has long symbolized divine power in mythologies around the world, from gods like Zeus to Thor, and the film used that imagery to suggest that immortals were absorbing the knowledge and life force of their defeated opponents. Music played an equally important role in shaping the film's identity. Members of Queen, including Brian May and Roger Taylor, originally intended to contribute only a single song. After watching early footage, however, they became deeply inspired and convinced Freddie Mercury to help create multiple songs for the film. Tracks like Princes of the Universe and Who Wants to Live Forever became inseparable from the movie's emotional tone. The final duel almost took place in a far more famous location. Early plans imagined the climactic fight happening on the crown of the Statue of Liberty. However, obtaining permission to film there proved too complicated and expensive. Instead, the scene was filmed on a rooftop at Silvercup Studios, which ended up fitting the gritty atmosphere of the story surprisingly well. Finally, the entire concept of Highlander began as a college assignment. Screenwriter Gregory Wyden originally developed the idea while working on a student project titled ShadowClan. After visiting a museum display of ancient weapons, he began imagining warriors who might have carried those blades through centuries of history. That simple idea eventually grew into the immortal mythology that made Highlander unforgettable. A writer named Gregory Wyden first imagined a story centered on the deep isolation that would come with immortality. In his idea, a man lives forever but cannot build lasting relationships because everyone he loves eventually grows old and dies while he stays the same age. That emotional burden became the core of the narrative. What started as a college assignment eventually attracted the interest of film producers who recognized the cinematic possibilities within Wyden's mythology. They expanded his thesis into a full screenplay, building a larger universe and adding more mystery about the origins of the immortals. Over time, what began as a student project evolved into a much larger franchise that included multiple films, television adaptations, and a devoted fan base around the world. Before the film finally cast Christopher Lambert as Connor MacLeod, many well-known action stars of the 1980s were considered for the role. Mel Gibson, who had just gained fame from Mad Max, was initially a strong candidate, but reportedly wanted too much creative control. Kevin Costner also read for the role, but scheduling conflicts with other projects prevented him from committing. Patrick Swayze showed genuine interest and imagined the character as a romantic warrior, while Kurt Russell actively pursued the part, seeing it as an opportunity to move beyond the family-friendly image he had from his earlier Disney projects. Ultimately, Christopher Lambert was chosen, and that unexpected decision changed everything. Because he was relatively unknown to American audiences, viewers came in without expectations. His unusual accent, distinctive features, and European presence made Connor feel like someone truly out of place in the modern world. What initially seemed like an unconventional casting decision ultimately became one of the film's greatest strengths. Scotland's dramatic landscape is filled with historic castles, but one location became especially connected to Highlander's legacy. Donan Castle, located on a small island where 3 sea lochs meet, served as the ancestral home of Connor MacLeod. The production team adapted this 13th-century fortress to represent a 15th-century Highland village during the film's flashback scenes. The location already carried a rich history. It had originally been built as a defensive stronghold against Viking attacks and was later destroyed in 1719 before being carefully restored in the early 20th century. Its weathered stone and isolated setting created a medieval atmosphere that studio sets could never replicate. After the movie's release, tourism to the castle increased dramatically. What had once been a modest historical site soon became one of Scotland's most photographed castles, as fans traveled there to experience the place where Connor's story began. Christopher Lambert delivered intense sword-fighting scenes throughout the film, but many viewers never realized he faced a serious physical limitation while performing them. The actor suffered from severe nearsightedness and could barely see his opponents during the choreographed combat sequences. Because of this, he relied heavily on memorizing movement patterns, carefully rehearsing positions, and trusting the other performers around him to avoid accidents. Crew members also had to position themselves strategically during filming, so he could navigate the set safely. Lambert memorized not only his own actions but also where the cameras, lights, and crew members were located, moving through scenes almost by instinct. Interestingly, this limitation actually improved his performance. His careful and controlled fighting style made Connor appear thoughtful and calculating, rather than reckless. His slightly distant gaze also added a mysterious quality to the character, as if the immortal warrior was always reflecting on centuries of memories. The music of Queen became one of the most memorable aspects of Highlander, but one unusual recording made for the film is largely unknown to most fans. The band recorded a playful rock version of New York, New York, imagining it as a humorous contrast to Connor's centuries-old perspective on the loud and energetic modern city. However, the song was ultimately removed before the film's final release. Editors felt its humorous tone conflicted with the serious, mythic atmosphere they wanted for the movie. As a result, the track was cut during the editing process and never officially included in the theatrical version. It survived mainly through bootleg recordings circulated among dedicated Queen collectors. Even so, the recording shows how creatively experimental the band was while working on the soundtrack. Professional wrestling icon Hulk Hogan has often claimed that he was once offered the lead role in Highlander, but turned it down to continue focusing on his wrestling career. Over the years, he has repeated this story in interviews and even mentioned it in his autobiography as proof of his loyalty to wrestling. However, many people involved in the film believe the story may have been misunderstood or exaggerated. The opening scene of Highlander features a wrestling match filmed at Madison Square Garden using real WWF wrestlers, and it is possible Hogan was considered for a brief cameo appearance in that sequence. With time, that small opportunity may have evolved in memory into something much larger. In reality, producers were pursuing experienced film actors like Mel Gibson and Kurt Russell for the lead role. While Hogan had a strong personality suited for wrestling entertainment, the complex character of Connor MacLeod required a level of acting experience he likely did not possess at that time. Another unusual detail from the production involves Sean Connery's famous opening narration. His voice sets the mythic tone for the entire film, but the recording itself happened in a surprisingly ordinary location. Connery recorded the lines inside a hotel bathroom because the natural echo created by the tiles and hard surfaces produced a powerful reverberation. Sound engineers immediately realized the small room created the perfect natural acoustic effect, making his voice sound almost godlike. Instead of trying to recreate the same sound artificially in a recording studio, they simply placed a microphone in the bathroom and recorded the narration there. The result was a voice performance that felt ancient and mystical, proving that creative solutions can sometimes produce better results than expensive studio technology. When Highlander became successful, a sequel was quickly planned, but the follow-up film, Highlander 2, The Quickening, became infamous for the wrong reasons. One of the most controversial decisions was revealing that the immortals were actually aliens from a distant planet called Zeist. This change drastically altered the mysterious mythology established in the original movie and angered many fans. Behind the scenes, production was also chaotic. Filming took place in Argentina during a period of severe economic instability, where inflation and currency problems caused major budget complications. The final result received extremely negative reviews from critics and fans alike. Many people involved in the project later distanced themselves from it. Director Russell Mulcahy eventually released an alternative version that removed much of the alien storyline, but the damage to the franchise's reputation had already been done. Interestingly, the original Highlander did not perform particularly well at the American box office when it first premiered. Critics gave mixed reactions, and many felt unsure about the film's combination of time-jumping storytelling, Scottish history, modern New York settings, and Queen's dramatic rock soundtrack. However, the movie found far greater success in Europe, especially in France, where Christopher Lambert was already a well-known actor. As the film spread across the continent, audiences began to appreciate its unique mix of romance, action, and mythology. Later, the rise of home video and cable television helped it reach a much larger audience. Throughout the late 1980s and 1990s, viewers repeatedly discovered the film, gradually turning it into a cult classic. Years later, actor Nick Offerman became one of the film's most enthusiastic supporters. Known for his role as Ron Swanson on the television series Parks and Recreation, Offerman frequently joked that watching Highlander should be considered essential viewing. His humorous admiration for the movie helped introduce it to younger audiences who might never have encountered it otherwise. Within the show itself, references to Highlander appeared as part of Ron Swanson's tough guy cultural tastes, presenting the movie as a symbol of rugged individuality and classic action storytelling. Some scenes exploring Connor MacLeod's emotional struggles were also removed from the final version of the film. The deleted material included longer conversations between Connor and Brenda that explored the sadness of immortality in greater depth. In these scenes, Connor described the pain of watching loved ones grow old and die while he continued living through the centuries. He spoke about relationships he had lost and the emotional exhaustion that came with an endless life. These moments revealed a much more tragic side of the character. However, editors removed them to maintain the film's pacing and keep the story moving quickly. The famous opening scene of Highlander also contains an interesting piece of filmmaking creativity. Instead of staging a large wrestling crowd with extras, the production team filmed during a real WWF event at Madison Square Garden. Thousands of fans attending the match had no idea they were appearing in a fantasy movie. By carefully positioning their cameras within the real event, the filmmakers captured authentic crowd reactions and energy. This clever approach blended reality with fiction so effectively that viewers could hardly tell the difference. Despite its unusual production journey, Highlander ultimately achieved a kind of cinematic immortality similar to its characters. The film combined unexpected elements, from improvised sound recordings to creative visual solutions, into something unique. Christopher Lambert's distinctive voice and delivery became part of the character's mystique, while Queen's powerful music